The aesthetic of the obsidian room was dark mahogany, velvet curtains, and the smell of money mixed with just a hint of fear. It was the kind of place where politicians made deals they would deny in the morning, and where men like Julian Blackwood held court. Sophia Vance adjusted the strap of her apron, wincing slightly. The bruise on her ribcage from her training session earlier that morning was throbbing. To the patrons of the obsidian room, Sophia was nobody. She was a ghost in a black uniform, a vessel for scotch and overpriced steak. She had mastered the art of being invisible. She kept her eyes down, her movements efficient, and her mouth shut. That was the rule of survival she had learned from her father, a man whose name was whispered in military black sites rather than dinner parties. If they don't see you, they can't kill you. Table 4 needs a refill on the Macallan. The floor manager, a sweaty man named Greg, hissed at her as she passed the bar. "And fix your hair. You look like you've been running." "Yes, Greg," Sophia murmured, her voice flat. She took the heavy crystal decanter and moved toward table 4, the private booth in the far corner, shrouded in shadows. This was Julian Blackwood's table. Julian was undeniably handsome in a sharp, terrifying way. He wore tailored Italian suits that cost more than Sophia made in 5 years. He had dark hair, eyes like cold steel, and a jawline that looked carved from granite. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't have to. When Julian Blackwood whispered, the city leaned in to listen. Tonight, however, the energy at table 4 was wrong. Usually, Julian sat with his back to the wall, a standard tactical position, surrounded by his usual security detail. But tonight, the security was gone. Sitting across from him wasn't a client, but Marcus Thorne. Marcus was Julian's second-in-command, a man with a smile too wide and eyes too shifting. Sophia had never liked him. He tipped poorly and stared at the waitresses with a predatory hunger that made Sophia's skin crawl. As she approached the table to pour the whiskey, her senses, honed by years of secret drills in a dusty basement, began to prickle. The air conditioning is humming, but Marcus is sweating, she noted. His hand is under the table. She poured the amber liquid into Julian's glass. Julian didn't look at her. He was staring intently at Marcus. "You're quiet tonight, Marcus," Julian said. His voice was a low baritone, smooth but laced with a hidden edge. "Usually you're bragging about the new shipment from the docks by now." Marcus laughed, but the sound was brittle. It cracked in the middle. "Just thinking about the future, Julian. Evolution. Things have to change, right? Empires rise, empires fall." Sophia finished pouring. She should have walked away. That was the job. Pour, retreat, disappear. But her feet felt heavy, rooted to the expensive Persian rug. She noticed something else. The other patrons. 2 men at the bar were nursing beers they hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Their jackets were bulky on the left side. Another man, sitting alone near the kitchen entrance, was checking his watch every 10 seconds. "Kill box," Sophia's mind whispered. The term flashed in her brain like a neon sign. "They've set up a kill box." "That will be all," Marcus snapped at her, waving his hand dismissively without looking up. "Get lost." Sophia took a step back, clutching the silver tray against her chest. She moved toward the service station, but didn't go through the doors. Instead, she stopped in the sliver of shadow behind a large decorative fern. She watched. Julian took a sip of his drink. "You seem nervous, Marcus. Is there something you want to tell me?" "I want to tell you that you've had a good run, Julian," Marcus said. The fake smile vanished. His face went hard, ugly with envy. "But the commission thinks you're getting soft. They think you're too focused on legitimate business. We're criminals, Julian, not real estate moguls. I'm legitimizing the family so we don't die in prison, Julian replied calmly, though Sophia saw his hand inch toward the inside of his jacket. Too late, Marcus sneered. The atmosphere in the room snapped. The music seemed to stop. The two men at the bar stood up simultaneously. The man by the kitchen door locked it. Julian Blackwood was the most dangerous man in the city, but he had made the fatal mistake of trusting a friend. He was boxed in. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. Walk away, her survival instinct screamed. This isn't your fight. You're just a waitress. You have a cat to feed. Walk away. But as she watched Marcus's hand come up from under the table, gripping a suppressed Beretta, she realized she couldn't do it. She couldn't watch an execution. Don't bother reaching for your piece, Julian, Marcus gloated, leveling the gun at Julian's chest. My guys emptied your holster in the coat check. You're toothless. Julian froze. For the first time, a flicker of genuine shock crossed his face. He looked left, then right, realizing the men at the bar had drawn their weapons too. He was surrounded by 6 barrels. Marcus, Julian said, his voice dangerously quiet. You pull that trigger, you start a war you can't finish. I'm not starting a war, Marcus smirked, his finger tightening on the trigger. I'm ending one. Goodbye, boss. Time seemed to slow down. Sophia moved before she made the conscious decision to do so. It was muscle memory. It was the years of her father throwing tennis balls at her while she was blindfolded, forcing her to react to sound and air pressure. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She flowed. Sophia sprinted from the shadows, closing the 10-foot gap between the service station and table 4 in 2 strides. As she ran, she shifted her grip on the heavy silver serving tray. It wasn't a tray anymore. It was a discus, a shield, a weapon. Just as Marcus's finger squeezed down, Sophia flung the heavy metal tray with terrifying precision. Clang! The edge of the silver tray caught Marcus squarely on the wrist. The bone snapped with a sickening crunch. The gun discharged, but the shot went wild, shattering a bottle of expensive champagne behind the bar instead of piercing Julian's heart. What the? Marcus screamed, clutching his broken wrist, dropping the gun onto the table. The room erupted into chaos. The men at the bar shouted, swinging their weapons toward the booth. Julian was fast, but he was unarmed. He lunged for the gun on the table, but he was off balance. Sophia didn't stop moving. She didn't freeze. She slid across the polished floor in her sensible work shoes, coming to a stop right beside the table. Her hand snatched the Beretta before it even stopped spinning. She didn't hold it like a waitress holding a dirty rag. She held it with a 2-handed grip, thumbs forward, elbows locked, stance wide. Breath out. Squeeze. Bang. Bang. 2 controlled shots. The man by the kitchen door dropped, clutching his shoulder. The 2 men at the bar hesitated, shocked by the sight of the petite waitress handling a firearm like a Navy SEAL. That hesitation was their funeral. Get down! Sophia screamed at Julian. She didn't wait for him to comply. She grabbed the lapel of his $3,000 suit and yanked him down behind the overturned heavy oak table, just as the air above them filled with lead. Bullets shredded the velvet booth, sending feathers and wood splinters flying. Julian Blackwood, the king of the underworld, was currently crouched on the floor, staring at his waitress. He looked at her name tag, Sophia, and then at the gun in her hand, which was tracking the movement of the shooters with professional calm. "Who the hell are you?" Julian shouted over the gunfire. "Refills are free," Sophia grunted, checking the magazine. "But saving your life is going to cost extra. Do you have a backup weapon?" "Ankle holster," Julian barked. "But it's empty. Marcus took the mag." "Useless," Sophia hissed. She popped up, fired 3 suppressive shots to keep the gunmen's heads down, and ducked back. "We need to move. The kitchen exit is blocked, but the shooter is down. If we go now, we make the alley." "There are 3 more coming in the front," Julian warned, peering around the edge of the table. "Then we don't go out the front." Sophia looked at the large, decorative aquarium built into the wall separating the booth from the main hallway. It was massive, filled with exotic fish and hundreds of gallons of water. "Shoot the tank," she ordered. "What?" "Shoot the tank. The water pressure will knock them off balance. It's our cover." Julian looked at her like she was insane, but he had no other options. He grabbed a heavy steak knife from the floor, his only weapon. Sophia took a deep breath. She rose up, exposed. The gunmen leveled their sights on her. She didn't shoot them. She fired 3 rounds into the bottom corner of the massive glass tank. Crash! The glass gave way. A tidal wave of water, decorative rocks, and confused tropical fish exploded into the hallway. The rushing water swept the feet out from under the approaching gunmen, sending them sliding across the slick floor, their shots firing harmlessly into the ceiling. "Run!" Sophia grabbed Julian's arm. They sprinted through the chaotic flood, splashing through the water. Sophia fired 1 shot behind her, not to kill, but to shatter the overhead lights, plunging the room into darkness. They burst through the kitchen doors. The chefs were cowering under the stainless steel counters. Sophia knew the layout perfectly. She navigated the maze of stoves and prep tables, dragging the Mafia boss behind her. They burst out into the cool night air of the alleyway. The smell of garbage and rain hit them. "My car!" Julian gasped, pointing toward a sleek black Mercedes parked at the end of the alley. "It's armored." "Keys?" "In my pocket." They ran. Behind them, the back door of the restaurant flew open. Marcus, cradling his broken wrist, stumbled out, screaming. "Kill them! I want them both dead, especially the girl!" Bullets pinged off the brick walls around them. Sophia spun around, walking backward as she fired. She counted her rounds. 3 left. She aimed for the transformer box on the telephone pole above Marcus's head. Bang! Sparks rained down like fireworks, creating a wall of fire and electricity between them and their pursuers. Marcus scrambled back to avoid being electrocuted. They reached the Mercedes. Julian fumbled with the fob, his hands shaking from the adrenaline dump. The lights flashed. "Get in!" he roared. Sophia dove into the passenger seat just as Julian slammed the car into gear. The tires screeched, burning rubber as the heavy vehicle shot forward, clipping a dumpster before roaring onto the main street. Sophia slumped back in the leather seat, her chest heaving. She still held the gun, her finger indexed safely along the barrel. She looked down at her apron. It was covered in water, fish tank gravel, and a smear of someone else's blood. The silence in the car was deafening. Julian drove aggressively, weaving through traffic on 5th Avenue, checking his rearview mirror constantly. Once he was sure they weren't being followed, he slowed down slightly. He didn't look at the road. He turned his head and stared at Sophia. His eyes were calculating, intense, and filled with a terrifying curiosity. "You handled that Beretta better than my head of security," Julian said, his voice low. "You knew about suppressive fire. You knew how to clear a fatal funnel. You shot out the lights to destroy their night vision." Sophia didn't look at him. She stared out the window at the blurring city lights. "I watch a lot of action movies, Mr. Blackwood." "Bullshit." Julian slammed his hand on the steering wheel. "Who sent you? Are you a plant? Federal agent? Rival family?" Sophia finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired, stripping away the subservient waitress mask she had worn for 2 years. "If I was sent to kill you, Julian, I would have let Marcus pull the trigger, or I would have shot you myself in the chaos." Julian paused. The logic was sound. "Then who are you?" "I'm just a waitress who wants to go home," Sophia lied. "Drop me off at the next corner." "Not a chance," Julian laughed, a dark, humorless sound. "Marcus knows your face now. He knows you saved me. You're marked, Sophia. You go back to your apartment. You'll be dead in an hour." Sophia felt a cold knot of dread in her stomach. He was right. She had exposed herself. The quiet life she had built, the shitty apartment, the stray cat she fed, the anonymity. It was all gone. "So what now?" she asked. "Now?" Julian checked his mirror again. "Now we go to ground, and you tell me exactly how a girl who serves steak for minimum wage learned to shoot like a contract killer." The safe house wasn't a house. It was a penthouse loft in a renovated industrial building on the edge of the Navy Yard. No doorman, private elevator, reinforced steel walls disguised as exposed brick chic. Julian keyed in a code, and the heavy metal doors hissed open. He shoved Sophia inside first, a habit of protection, or perhaps he just wanted to keep his eyes on her. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the sharp sting of bruises and the dull ache of reality. Julian tossed his keys on a glass table and immediately went to a wall panel. He tapped a screen. Steel shutters descended over the floor-to-ceiling windows, sealing them inside a metal box. "Safe," Julian breathed out, loosening his tie. He walked over to a wet bar and poured 2 glasses of vodka. "No ice." He slid one across the marble counter toward Sophia. "Drink. It stops the shaking." Sophia looked at her hands. They weren't shaking. She took the glass anyway, the burn of the alcohol grounding her. "Sit," Julian commanded, pointing to a leather armchair. Sophia sat, but she perched on the edge, ready to spring. Julian leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. His tuxedo shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a tattoo on his collarbone, a Latin phrase, "Mors vincit omnia," death conquers all. "I ran a background check on every employee at the Obsidian Room," Julian started, his eyes narrowing. "Sophia Vance, Social Security number issued in Ohio. High school diploma from a generic public school. No college. No criminal record. You pay your taxes early. You have a cat named Pickles." "His name is Puddles," Sophia corrected softly. "You are the most boring person on paper I have ever seen, which means the paper is a lie." Julian took a step closer. "Who taught you to shoot? And don't tell me it was movies." Sophia sighed. She knew this moment was coming. The anonymity she had cultivated for 5 years was shattered. "My name is Sophia," she said, meeting his gaze. "But Vance isn't my real last name. My father changed it when we went underground." "Who was your father?" "Silas Vane." Julian froze. The glass in his hand paused halfway to his mouth. The silence in the room grew heavy, suffocating. "Silas Vane," Julian repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "The CIA's cleaner? The man they called the Architect? You've heard of him." "Heard of him?" "He's a bedtime story for criminals," Julian said, looking at her with a mixture of awe and horror. "They say he killed a cartel boss in Mexico with a ballpoint pen. They say he disappeared 10 years ago after stealing a ledger containing the names of every corrupt senator in Washington." "He didn't steal it," Sophia said bitterly. "He tried to destroy it. They killed him for it." She stood up, pacing the room. "He trained me since I was 6, not to be an assassin, but to survive. He knew his past would catch up to him. He taught me how to disappear, how to shoot, how to spot a tail. When he died, I ran. I became Sophia, the waitress. I wanted a normal life, Julian. I just wanted to be boring." Julian looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he didn't see a waitress anymore. He saw the daughter of a legend, a sleeper agent awakened by necessity. "Well," Julian said, downing his drink, "you failed at being boring tonight." "I saved your life." "You did," Julian admitted. He walked over to her, invading her personal space. The scent of expensive cologne and gunpowder filled her nose. And now, Silas Vane's daughter is in the middle of a Mafia war. Marcus won't stop, Sophia. He can't. If I live, he dies. It's binary. So call your men, Sophia said. Rally the troops. Crush him. Julian let out a dark laugh. It's not that simple. Marcus has been planning this coup for months. He didn't just turn the guys in the restaurant. He likely has half my capos on his payroll. If I call for backup, I might be calling my executioners. I need to know who is loyal before I make a move. He pulled a burner phone from a hidden drawer. There's one man I trust. Arthur Sterling, my accountant. He knows where the money is buried. If Marcus wants the throne, he needs the keys to the kingdom. He'll go after Arthur. Julian dialed. He put it on speaker. Ring. Ring. Julian? The voice on the other end was frantic. My God, the news says there was a shootout. Are you... I'm alive, Arthur. Barely. I'm at the safe house. The Spire. The Spire? Okay. Okay, good. You're safe there. Look, I have the encrypted ledgers. I'm heading to you now. I can be there in 20 minutes. Come alone, Arthur. Trust no one. I know. I'm on my way. The line clicked dead. Julian exhaled. Arthur is solid. He's been with my family since my father's days. Once he gets here with the funds, we can hire outside muscle. We can fight back. Sophia stood by the window, peering through the slats of the steel shutters. Something was nagging at her, a feeling in the back of her neck, a ghost of her father's voice. Check the timeline, Sophia. How far does Arthur live from here? Sophia asked. He lives in the suburbs. Westchester, Julian replied, pouring another drink. Why? Westchester is 40 minutes away without traffic. He said he'd be here in 20. Julian frowned. Maybe he was already in the city. Maybe, Sophia said. She walked over to the wall panel that controlled the building's security feed. She tapped into the lobby camera. Or maybe he was already waiting for the call. She zoomed in on the street outside the building. A black van was idling down the block. It had no license plates. Julian, Sophia said, her voice tight. How many people know about the Spire? Just me and Arthur. Sophia watched the screen. The side door of the van slid open. 4 men stepped out. They weren't wearing street clothes. They were wearing tactical gear, night vision goggles, suppressors. Arthur didn't bring the ledgers, Sophia whispered. He sold you out. We have to leave. Now, Sophia said, turning from the screen. Julian rushed to the monitor. SWAT team? No, private military contractors, mercenaries, Sophia analyzed quickly. Look at the formation. 2-point men, 1 heavy, 1 rear guard. These aren't street thugs like Marcus had. These are pros. Arthur must have paid a fortune for them. I'm going to kill him, Julian growled, grabbing a shotgun from his weapons cache. I'm going to peel his skin off. Focus on living first, Sophia snapped. She grabbed a customized Glock 19 and several spare magazines from the wall. She tossed a Kevlar vest to Julian. Put this on. The elevator is compromised. They'll cut the power any second. As if on cue, the lights in the penthouse died. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The heavy steel shutters locked in place. They were trapped in the dark. Emergency lights? Julian asked. No, Sophia whispered. Darkness is our friend. They have night vision. We don't. If we turn on lights, we're targets. We need to blind them. She ran to the kitchen. What are you doing? Making a distraction. Sophia grabbed a bottle of high-proof rum, a rag, and a lighter. Do you have flares? In the survival kit under the sofa. Get them. The elevator dinged. Sophia and Julian froze. The elevator had a bypass key. The mercenaries were coming up. They'll breach in 3, 2, 1. Sophia counted down. The elevator doors blew open with a small C4 charge, not to destroy but to shock. Smoke filled the entryway. Lasers cut through the smoke, scanning the room. "Clear right," a distorted voice said over a radio. "Clear left. Target is likely in the bedroom." They were moving methodically. Sophia lit the rag stuffed into the rum bottle. She didn't throw it at them. She threw it at the sprinkler system sensor on the ceiling above the elevator. The heat triggered the sensor immediately. Hiss! The fire suppression system roared to life, dumping gallons of water into the room. "Water?" Julian whispered from behind the sofa. "How does that help?" "Night vision goggles amplifies light," Sophia explained, pulling the pin on a road flare. "And water reflects light." She tossed the red-burning flare into the middle of the wet floor, right in front of the tactical team. The effect was blinding. The intense red light of the flare hit the curtain of falling water, creating a dazzling, scattering wall of luminescence. To the mercenaries wearing sensitive night vision goggles, it was like staring into the sun. "Gah! My eyes!" the point man screamed, ripping his goggles off. "Now!" Sophia yelled. She popped up from behind the kitchen island. She didn't spray and pray. She double-tapped. Bang, bang. The point man went down. Bang, bang. The heavy gunner took 2 to the chest plate, stumbled, and fell. Julian rose with the shotgun. Boom! The spread caught the 3rd man in the leg, spinning him around. The 4th man, the leader, was smart. He didn't look at the flare. He dove behind the marble wet bar and returned fire. Bullets chewed up the expensive Italian leather sofa Julian was using for cover. "We can't stay here," Julian shouted. "There will be a second wave." "The balcony," Sophia pointed. "We're on the 20th floor. Do you have a rappel line? I have a fire escape ladder that goes down 2 floors. "Good enough." They laid down covering fire, forcing the mercenary leader to keep his head down. They sprinted for the balcony door. Julian wrestled the manual lock open and shoved the heavy door outward. The wind howled, cold and biting. They stepped out onto the terrace. The city of New York sprawled below them, a grid of diamonds. Sophia spotted the retractable ladder box. She kicked it open. The ladder unspooled, rattling against the side of the building. "Go!" she ordered. Julian climbed over the railing. He was halfway down when the glass door behind Sophia shattered. The mercenary leader had pushed through. Sophia spun around. The mercenary raised his rifle. She was out of bullets. Click. The mercenary grinned behind his tactical mask. "Game over, bitch." He was about to squeeze the trigger when a red dot appeared on his chest. Thwip. A single shot rang out from the darkness of the night. Not from Sophia, and not from Julian. It came from a rooftop across the street. The mercenary's head snapped back, and he collapsed, dead before he hit the floor. Sophia stared at the body, then at the distant rooftop. She saw nothing but shadows. Someone had just saved her. But who? "Sophia! Move!" Julian screamed from below. She shook herself out of the daze and scrambled down the ladder. They didn't stop moving for 3 hours. They ditched the ladder on the 18th floor, broke a window to enter an office building, went down the service stairs, and exited through a loading dock. They stole a nondescript Honda Civic from a parking garage. Julian hotwired it, a skill from his youth that he clearly hadn't forgotten. They drove out of the city, crossing the bridge into Jersey. The skyline of Manhattan receded behind them, a glittering beast that had tried to chew them up and spit them out. They pulled into a dingy motel off the I-95 called the Sleeping Bear. It was the kind of place where people paid cash and nobody asked questions. Inside the room, the neon sign outside flickered, casting a rhythmic red glow across the peeling wallpaper. Julian sat on the edge of the bed, groaning as he pulled his shirt off. The Kevlar vest had stopped the bullets, but the impact had left massive, dark purple bruises across his ribs. Sophia went into the bathroom and came out with a wet towel. She knelt before him, dabbing the sweat and grime from his face. The dynamic had shifted. In the restaurant, she was the servant. In the safe house, she was the soldier. Here, in the quiet dark, they were just two survivors. "Who took that shot?" Julian asked, wincing as she pressed the cold towel against a bruise. "On the balcony. You were dead to rights. Someone sniped him." "I don't know," Sophia said softly. "But I have a theory. My father, he had friends. Ghosts, he called them. People who owed him favors. Before he died, he told me that if I was ever truly cornered, the shadows might blink." "So you have a guardian angel with a sniper rifle?" Julian tried to joke, but his voice was thick with exhaustion. "Maybe." Julian caught her hand. His grip was firm. "You saved me twice tonight. 3 times if you count the car ride. Why? You could have run in the alley. You could have left me at the safe house." Sophia looked at him. The distance between them closed. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind a raw, magnetic pull. "I told you," she whispered. "I hate bullies. And Marcus is a bully." "Is that the only reason?" Julian searched her eyes. Sophia didn't answer. She didn't have to. The air between them crackled. Julian reached up, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed over a smudge of gunpowder on her cheekbone. "I can't promise you a happy ending, Sophia," he murmured. "I'm a bad man. I've done terrible things." "I know who you are, Julian Blackwood," she replied. "But tonight, you're just the guy who refused to die." He kissed her. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, fueled by the proximity of death and the fury of survival. It tasted like copper and fear and hope. For an hour, the war outside didn't exist. But as dawn broke, painting the ugly motel room in shades of grey, reality returned. Sophia was sitting by the window, cleaning the Glock. Julian was pacing, his phone in hand. "We have a problem," Julian said, his voice hard again. The lover was gone. The boss was back. "What is it?" "I can't access my offshore accounts. Arthur didn't just sell me out. He locked me out. He's trying to drain the liquidity. If he succeeds, he hands Marcus a $1 billion war chest. They'll buy the police, the judges, the politicians. I'll be a fugitive forever." Sophia racked the slide of the gun. "Where is Arthur now?" "He's smart. He'll be at the impenetrable fortress, the vault." "The vault?" "It's a private bank in the financial district. Underground, heavy security. Arthur has to physically be there to authorize the transfer of the master keys. He's probably there right now, finalizing the theft." Sophia stood up. She looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The waitress was dead. The daughter of Silas Vane was fully awake. "Then we have to go to the financial district," she said calmly. "Are you crazy? It'll be crawling with Marcus's men and the police. We have one gun and a stolen Honda." Sophia smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that reminded Julian terrifyingly of the stories about her father. "We don't need an army, Julian. We need a distraction, and I know exactly how to get one." "How?" "My father didn't just teach me how to shoot," Sophia said, grabbing her coat. "He taught me how to build bombs out of cleaning supplies. And he taught me that the best way to break into a fortress is to let them open the front door for you." She tossed him the car keys. "Drive. I need to make a stop at a hardware store. We're going to rob a bank." The vault wasn't just a bank. It was a fortress buried beneath the bedrock of Wall Street. It was a place where the 1% hid their secrets. Gold bars, bearer bonds, blackmail tapes, and the digital keys to empires. It was designed to withstand a nuclear blast, but it wasn't designed to withstand a pissed-off waitress and a fallen king. Sophia pulled the brim of her city maintenance cap lower, casting a shadow over her eyes. She and Julian were dressed in oversized, grease-stained grey coveralls they'd bought at a surplus store in Jersey. Julian, the man who usually wore $5,000 bespoke suits, looked uncomfortable. He was carrying a heavy, rusted toolbox, and the name patch on his chest read, Randy. "Stop adjusting your collar," Sophia hissed without moving her lips. "Plumbers don't walk like they own the building. They walk like their backs hurt, and they hate their boss. Slouch." Julian let out a breath and slumped his shoulders, dragging his feet slightly. "I feel ridiculous. We are walking into the most secure building in Manhattan with a bucket of bleach and a screwdriver." "Not a screwdriver," Sophia corrected, pushing a heavy industrial cleaning cart that squeaked with every rotation of its wheels. "A master key. You just have to know where to stick it." They reached the service checkpoint. It was a sterile, white room, separated from the main lobby by bulletproof glass and steel turnstiles. A guard with a neck as thick as a tree trunk sat behind the glass, watching a football game on a small tablet. "Service," Sophia announced, her voice adopting a rough, bored Queen's accent. "Emergency HVAC flush. Building management said the vents on B3 are backing up. Smells like a dead rat cooked in sewage down there." The guard looked up, unimpressed. He eyed Julian, then the cart. "I didn't get a call." "Yeah, well, that's 'cause management is too busy counting pennies to call security," Sophia countered, slapping a clipboard against the glass. She had forged the work order in the car using an old invoice and a steady hand. "Look, buddy, you can let us in, or you can explain to the guys in suits why the air conditioning starts pumping methane gas into the VIP lounge in about 20 minutes. Your call." The guard wrinkled his nose at the mental image. He picked up the phone to verify, but then looked at the line of impatient bankers forming behind the main security desk. He sighed, stamped the clipboard, and buzzed the gate. "You got 10 minutes, he grunted. "Don't touch anything shiny." They moved through the turnstile. As soon as they were out of earshot, Julian whispered, "You are terrifyingly good at lying." "Survival, Julian," she replied, her eyes scanning the ceiling for cameras. "Truth gets you killed. Lies get you through the door." They navigated the labyrinthine service corridors, moving deeper underground. The air grew cooler, sterile and recycled. They passed the heavy vault doors on level B1 and B2, where the physical gold was stored. But they weren't here for gold. They were here for level B3, the server farm. Sophia stopped at a main ventilation intake junction. It was a narrow alcove, hidden from the main camera sweep. She opened the cleaning cart. Inside there were no mops. It was packed with jugs of ammonia, bleach, rubbing alcohol, and a handful of road flares. "Chemistry class," Sophia whispered. She began pouring the chemicals into a pressurized pesticide sprayer she'd modified. "Chlorine gas?" Julian asked, recognizing the sharp smell of the bleach. "Diluted," Sophia explained, her hands moving with surgical precision. "If I mix this right, it creates a heavy, irritating fog. It won't kill anyone, but it will burn their eyes, throats, and lungs. It triggers the building's biological threat sensors. And then the system defaults to emergency egress mode," Sophia said, screwing the lid onto the canister. The magnetic locks on the stairwells and non-critical doors disengage to let people escape. It's a fail-safe. We're going to use their own safety protocols against them. She set a timer on a burner phone taped to the canister. 60 minutes. That's when the gas releases into the vents. We need to be gone by then, or we'll be coughing up blood along with the guards. They continued down to level B3. The hallway here was different, sleek black marble and humming with the sound of cooling fans. At the end of the hall stood the entrance to the secure data room. 2 of Marcus's mercenaries were stationed there. They weren't standard security. They were geared up in tactical vests, holding submachine guns across their chests. "They're expecting trouble," Julian whispered, tightening his grip on the toolbox. "Plan B," Sophia said softly. "You take the left. I take the right." "I don't have a weapon, Sophia." "You're Julian Blackwood." She looked at him, her eyes fierce. "You are the weapon. Improvise." Julian nodded. He stepped out from the corner, letting the toolbox drop with a deafening clang on the marble floor. The mercenaries spun around, weapons raised. "Who goes there?" one shouted. Julian held up his hands, putting on his best confused workman act, walking slowly towards them. "Whoa, ease up, Rambo. Just here to fix the AC unit. Dropped my wrench." The mercenaries hesitated. They saw a man in a greasy jumpsuit, not a threat. That hesitation was their undoing. "Clear out, plumber. Restricted area." The guard on the left sneered, lowering his gun slightly. Julian didn't clear out. He lunged. He closed the distance in 2 strides, tackling the guard. It wasn't a graceful martial arts move. It was a street brawl tackle. They hit the floor hard. Julian jammed a heavy flathead screwdriver from his pocket into the gap of the mercenary's tactical vest, winding him before delivering a savage right hook to the jaw. The second guard turned to fire at Julian, but he never got the chance. Sophia slid across the floor like a baseball player sliding into home base. She held a high-voltage cattle prod she'd lifted from the hardware store. She didn't hesitate. She jammed the prongs into the exposed space between the guard's boot and pant leg. Zzzz crack! The mercenary convulsed, his muscles seizing instantly, and he collapsed face first onto the marble, unconscious. Julian stood up, panting, wiping blood from a split lip. He looked down at the men. "I haven't had to do that in a long time." "You still got it, old man," Sophia smirked, though her hands were trembling slightly. She moved to the keypad on the door. It was a biometric scanner. "We need a print," she said. Julian dragged the unconscious guard over and pressed the man's limp thumb against the glass scanner. Beep. Access granted. The heavy steel door hissed and slid open. The room inside was freezing, kept at sub-zero temperatures to cool the wall-to-wall server racks. In the center of the room, illuminated by the blue light of the monitors, was Arthur Sterling. The small, nervous accountant was typing frantically at a terminal. He was sweating despite the cold. When the door opened, he jumped, expecting Marcus. When he saw Julian, covered in grease, bleeding from the lip, and holding a screwdriver like a dagger, Arthur's face went ghost white. "Julian," Arthur stammered, backing away until he hit a server rack. I can explain." Julian walked into the room slowly. The door hissed shut behind them, sealing the 3 of them inside the soundproof box. "Explain?" Julian's voice was dangerously calm. "Explain how you sold 20 years of friendship for a payout? Explain why my men were ambushed?" "I had no choice," Arthur cried, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "Marcus, he's insane, Julian. He found out about my gambling debts. He threatened to expose me to the feds. He threatened my wife." "We don't trade lives, Arthur," Julian said, cornering him. "You should have come to me. I would have handled the debt. I would have protected you." "Protected me?" Arthur let out a hysterical laugh. "You were finished, Julian. Everyone said you were going soft. Marcus is the future. I just wanted to be on the winning side." Julian grabbed Arthur by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him against the server rack. "Look at me. Does it look like I'm finished?" "He's transferring the assets right now," Sophia shouted from the console. She had pushed past them and was typing furiously. "Julian, look at this. The transfer bar is at 95%. Julian released Arthur and rushed to the screen. "Stop it!" "I can't!" Sophia said, her fingers flying across the keys. "It's a hard-coded blockchain transfer. Once it starts, it can't be paused. It's going to Marcus's offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands." "Redirect it," Julian ordered. "To where?" Sophia asked. "I can't route it to your accounts. Marcus has those flagged. If I send it anywhere he can access, he wins." The elevator dinged in the hallway outside. Heavy boots, lots of them, echoed on the marble. "They're here," Julian said, looking at the security feed on a side monitor. Marcus Thorne was stepping off the elevator, with 6 heavily armed men. "Julian," Sophia said, her voice steady. "I can rewrite the destination code. I can send the money into a digital black hole, a null address. The money won't exist anymore. Nobody gets it. Not Marcus. Not you." Julian froze. He looked at the progress bar. 98%. This was everything. His retirement, his power, the leverage he held over judges and senators. If she hit that button, he would be penniless. He would be just another man in a cheap jumpsuit. "If you do that," Arthur whispered, horrified, "you burn down the kingdom. You'll be nothing." Julian looked at the screen. Then he looked at Sophia. She wasn't looking at the money. She was looking at him, waiting for his command. She was ready to die for him, but she needed to know what he stood for. "If I let Marcus take it, he uses that money to run this city into the ground," Julian said softly. The door handle to the server room began to turn. Sparks flew as Marcus's men started drilling the lock. Julian looked at Sophia. "Burn it!" "What?" Arthur screamed. "Burn it all down!" Julian roared. Sophia hit enter. The screen flashed red. "Error 404. Destination not found. Assets purged. Billions of dollars, accumulated over decades of crime and deals, vanished into the ether of the internet, deleted like a bad email." "You maniac!" Arthur shrieked, sliding to the floor in defeat. "He's going to kill us! He's going to skin us alive!" Boom! The server room door was blown off its hinges. Smoke filled the room. Marcus Thorne stepped through the haze, his assault rifle raised. He looked at the screen, saw the empty balance, and let out a scream of primal rage that shook the walls. "You stupid son of a bitch!" Marcus yelled, leveling his gun at Julian's chest. "You think this is a victory? You just dug your own grave." Julian stepped in front of Sophia, shielding her with his body. He held nothing but a screwdriver. He smiled. "Maybe," Julian said. "But at least I'm not you." Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. "Kill them," Marcus ordered his men. "Kill them all." Sophia closed her eyes, her hand gripping the back of Julian's coveralls. This was it. Click. The lights in the server room flickered and died. A red emergency strobe began to pulse, and then a voice, gravelly, calm, and terrifyingly familiar, crackled over the room's intercom system. "Gentlemen, you seem to have made a mistake." Marcus Thorne stepped through the smoke, an assault rifle in his hands. He was flanked by 6 heavily armed men. He looked at the computer screen, then at Julian. "You stupid son of a bitch," Marcus hissed, his face twisting into a mask of pure rage. "You just erased the kingdom." "Better to burn the throne than let a rat sit on it," Julian said, standing in front of Sophia. "Kill them," Marcus ordered. "Kill them slow." The mercenaries raised their weapons. There was no cover, no exit. This was it. Sophia reached for her gun, but she knew she wasn't fast enough to take out 7 men. She tightened her grip on Julian's arm. Click. The lights in the server room flickered. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The sound of the building's PA system activating. "Security Protocol Omega initiated," a robotic voice announced. "Unauthorized biological agent detected in ventilation. Ceiling level B3. "What?" Marcus looked up. Suddenly, the heavy blast doors at the entrance of the room, the ones designed to protect the servers from nuclear EMPs, slammed shut, sealing everyone inside. "You trapped us in here with them?" Marcus laughed nervously. "You trapped yourself too, Julian." "I didn't trigger the doors," Sophia whispered to Julian. "The gas timer hasn't gone off yet." A voice crackled over the room's intercom. It wasn't the robotic security voice. It was a human voice, gravelly, aged, terrifyingly calm. "Gentlemen," the voice said, "you seem to have made a mistake. You threatened my retirement plan." Sophia gasped. Her knees nearly buckled. She knew that voice. She hadn't heard it in 10 years, but she knew it better than her own heartbeat. "Dad," she whispered. Marcus spun around, looking for the source of the voice. "Who is this?" "Look at the camera," the voice commanded. Everyone turned to the security camera in the corner of the room. The red light blinked once. "Drop your weapons," Silas Vane said over the speakers, "or I vent the halon gas system. It sucks the oxygen out of the room in 10 seconds. You will all suffocate before you hit the floor." "He's bluffing!" Marcus screamed. "Open fire!" Whoosh! A jet of white gas erupted from the ceiling nozzles. Panic ensued. The mercenaries dropped their guns, clawing at their throats, gasping for air that wasn't there. Marcus fell to his knees, his face turning purple. "Dad, stop!" Sophia screamed at the camera. "You'll kill Julian." The gas hissed to a halt. The ventilation reversed, sucking the halon out and pumping fresh air in. The mercenaries were unconscious, sprawled on the floor. Marcus was gasping, retching on the ground, too weak to lift his rifle. The blast doors hissed open. Standing in the hallway wasn't a tactical team. It was one man. He was older, his hair silver, wearing a long trench coat and holding a suppressed sniper rifle casually at his side. He looked like a grandfather, except for the predator's eyes. Silas Vane walked into the room. He didn't look at Julian. He walked straight to Sophia. "You have a smudge on your cheek, Elle," he said softly. Sophia stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, mixed with fury. "You were dead. I buried an empty coffin." "I had to go away, to keep you safe," Silas said. "But then you decided to start dating the mob." He finally looked at Julian. "You have terrible taste in men, sweetie." Julian, for the first time in his life, looked genuinely intimidated. "Mr. Vane, it's an honor." "Zip it, criminal," Silas snapped. He walked over to Marcus, who was trying to crawl toward a pistol. Silas kicked the gun away and placed a boot on Marcus's chest. "This is the man who wanted to kill my daughter?" Silas asked. "He's all yours," Julian said. Silas shook his head. "No, I'm retired. I just came to clear the board. This is your world, Julian. You clean up your own trash." Silas turned back to Sophia. "I can't stay. The agency knows I'm active again. I bought you time, Sophia. But you have a choice now. You can come with me, disappear again, become a ghost, or..." He gestured to Julian and the empire that lay in ruins. "You can stay and rebuild." Sophia looked at her father. Then she looked at Julian, bruised, battered, broke, but standing tall. She looked at the unconscious mercenaries and the treacherous Marcus. She realized she didn't want to be invisible anymore. She didn't want to serve coffee and hide. "I'm done running, Dad," Sophia said. Silas smiled, a genuine, proud smile. "I figured. You always were stubborn, just like your mother." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Watch your six, kid." And just like that, the ghost vanished. Silas Vane walked out of the room, turned the corner, and was gone. Julian walked over to Sophia. They stood over Marcus, who was looking up at them in terror. "The money is gone, Julian," Marcus wheezed. "You have nothing, no empire, no soldiers." Julian looked at Sophia. She was holding the Glock, her stance perfect, her eyes fierce. "I have the girl. Julian said, "and we have a lot of work to do." The reopening of the Obsidian Room was the social event of the season. The renovations were sleek, modern, and expensive. Julian Blackwood stood on the balcony, watching the crowd below. He wore a new tuxedo, sharper than before. The doors opened, and a woman stepped out. She wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a backless emerald gown that cost more than the building. She held a glass of champagne, but her eyes were scanning the room, analyzing threats, checking exits, reading body language. "Table 6 is rowdy," Sophia said, stepping up beside him. "And the senator in the corner is wearing a wire." "I'll handle the senator," Julian said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "You handle the security team?" "Already done. I fired the new guys, hired some of my father's old contacts, professionals." Julian smiled. "You know, they're calling you the Iron Queen. They say you're more dangerous than I am." Sophia took a sip of champagne, the diamond on her finger catching the light. Not an engagement ring, but a promise of partnership. "They're right," she whispered, leaning into him. "I fired the first shot, remember?" Julian laughed. "How could I forget? You broke my best friend's wrist with a serving tray. And I'd do it again." Below them, the music swelled. The empire hadn't just been rebuilt. It had been forged into something stronger, something unbreakable. The king and the queen stood at the top of the world, and for the first time, nobody dared to challenge them. And that is how Sophia Vance went from serving drinks to ruling the city. She proved that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting, it's the one you never saw coming.